All right, ladies and gentlemen, today we're here with my friend Victor. Victor, nice to have you here.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, well, we are here in a beautiful setting here in Bali. Capital Club arranged this setting for us. How are you liking Capital Club so far?
I mean, Capital Club has been, think of, very, very good for me. I think it's like I was sharing before that I think is when you're in just the day-to-day routine, you wake up, you have your routine, you have your set of habits, and it's just so good to just get out of the day-to-day, just get in a different environment. There's a completely different vibe, and it's just the energy. I really like the quote that is like, think of a place or a city whispers something to you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's not very overt, but okay, there's a certain element or there's certain almost like an
It
energy to
is.
a place, and there's a completely different energy in Bali compared to like Eastern Europe where I
Yeah,
spent the last 6 months. So
yeah.
it's just very, very good to get out of the think of the day to day, and that's just a traveling. And I
Yeah.
find think of Capital Club to also be a very, very good event for anyone that have the opportunity to go to.
Yeah, I think so. Well, you had the opportunity because I got I got to
Exactly.
invite you, so that's really good. So, before we go into like all the strategies and everything else, like we have met a few years ago in Portugal, and we have like a mutual friend introduced us because you were doing Google Ads yourself as well. I do Google Ads dropshipping myself. So he was like, oh, you guys should meet up. Plus, I was moving to Portugal and you just went to Portugal. So tell me a little bit of your backstory. You're originally from Norway. How old are you?
So I'm from Norway, 24 years old, and I think it's like you can take this story from high school. I would think of almost like everyone else. Okay, started watching on YouTube. I see, okay, these guys are making like 10,000 per month, living in Bali, living in like as digital nomads from like websites, and I was like, okay, I have to do this. I have to figure it out. I'm not going to take education. I'm not going to a bachelor degree. I just have to figure this out. And then, but it was so difficult to basically get just the first traction. So I tried like social media marketing agencies. I would go out in the breaks. So think, okay, we had classes. We had like a 15-minute break between classes. I would like call physical therapists in that
No
break
way.
or basically try to sell them like Facebook ads, Instagram, like but then I was like so almost not immature, but I didn't know anything of business. I didn't know. I started completely from
But
scratch.
what if the client told you, yes, I want to, had you the knowledge to run the business itself? Like,
I mean, it was always like, okay, it's just I just need some traction. So it's like, okay, I will figure it out. We're just and then in the beginning, what I did was, okay, I'm not going to pitch for 2,000 euros because that seems like just an insane amount. I will do 300 euros, 400 euros. Because that was an amount that, okay, it's so small that, okay, it's like, it doesn't create too much pressure, but I took it like super, super serious.
and this was high school. So, and then
This
you,
was high school, yeah.
and what later? What happened?
Yeah, and then high school, and then I didn't literally for those 2 years. I was actively trying, but I didn't even make any sales, any revenue. It was just like spinning my wheels. And then after high school, I was like, okay, I need to build some skills. And then I went to basically started with cold calling, so selling mobile phone subscriptions over the phone. And the idea was, okay, I need to be able to build some skills. And then I was like, okay, sales is an ability that, okay, if I ever start a business, sales is what starts everything. I still tried what I did in high school. Okay, social media marketing agencies like e-commerce, but didn't really get any traction. But then I saw a YouTube video from Matthew Sabia. He's like, not well known, but he basically just outlined an entire strategy of how you could basically sell leads to businesses. So it was just, okay, you send out emails on behalf of these businesses, you get them appointments, and you get paid per appointment.
Yeah.
So then think of what I'd failed to do for myself. I started selling as a service, basically getting
Oh.
sales calls for other website businesses, marketing businesses. And then yeah, I still remember basically the first client I closed. So I was working during the day as
Mm-hmm.
in cold call, like as a cold caller, and then I had the idea, okay, I can't send like pitch basically businesses in Europe because it would be the same time zone as I'm working my day job.
Yeah.
So then I was like, okay, Australia, it's a different time zone, so I will take these during the night. Then I know I can say yes to any time they're available. So just imagine the setting of like this is Norway. It's like winter. I first tried to take. I was living with my parents and my family at that time, and I first tried to make a call. Think of at 2 a.m. I woke up everyone. Like my sister was crying. It was just a mess. So think of the next call I had to take like outside. So I was like walking in like November. It's like maybe 5 degrees. It's raining at like 2 a.m. I'm like nervous because like I'm speaking with like a business owner on a sales call and it's like freezing outside. So that too made my voice was like I was shivering when I was speaking. But then I'm not sure if he just felt sorry for me or he
Yeah,
actually thought
yeah.
I could deliver. But then I got basically the first client for like 800 Australian dollars for almost like a full-time job. And
Yeah.
that was really the start. And then I think of from there, it grew to maybe think of 1,500, 2,000 euros per month. Me and my friend, we were like, okay, screw this. Let's move from Norway because the goal was always, okay, let's live as digital nomads. Let's live in Bali. Let's live in Mexico, those countries. So then we just went out almost immediately. Like first 1,000 euros in revenue. I was like, okay,
Bye.
I quit the job and then left because it was almost like, okay, the difficulty is just the first
Yep.
thousand euros. And
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, if I could go back to myself and just trying, and it feels like you're spinning the wheels. I like the analogy of almost imagining you're on water and then you just look at the surface. And then imagine as okay, you're starting at like think of a depth of 200 meters. And what is happening when you feel like you're spinning your wheels is okay, you just look at the surface, you don't see anything, but you're like you're actually rising. Think of almost like a
Yep.
diver.
Yep.
But you just look at the surface, which is just revenue, and you don't see any
Nope.
change. But okay, you're building skill sets and skill sets and skill sets. And eventually you break basically the surface, and that's when you can shoot up. And yeah, so I basically think of run that small marketing agency. I did a few other marketing projects for like a year and a half, but it was still just at like 1,000 euros, 1,500 euros. I had like yeah, maybe 500 euros of expenses and I was living like super,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
super thin. Like this was then think of 2 years after then finishing high school. Had a big argument with my parents. They wanted me to study and they were like, okay, you worked on this for almost think of 2 years now and you worked, so it's almost 4 years in and you're making think of 50% of what
Yep.
you would get if you just get the normal
Degree
job.
and
Yeah.
job. Yep.
So then I was like, okay, I just need to figure this out. And I had a friend that was doing think of dropshipping on through Google and then tried some on Facebook in terms of dropshipping in that spring. Got like a one product up to like 1K a day, like literally one day it was 1K. Next day it was like 500 euros in sales and couldn't really get any traction on it. Went on a holiday for like 2 weeks, so just like a reset. Got back and I had 700 euros, literally in total. And then yeah, that was the total I had on the account. And then I was like, okay, I need to get out of basically this 2,000
Yep.
euros. It's like okay, it's time to. It's been 4 years
It's
in
time to lift
now.
up.
Now it's time to level up.
Yep.
And the story is quite interesting because I had a friend. He was running some affiliates and then he got some traction on e-commerce, but he was always selling other products. And we had think of the gentleman's agreement.
Yep.
Okay, we're not taking each other products. So okay, I had to find another product. And then what I did was I always watched a lot of YouTube videos. And then one YouTube video, there were like a Norwegian guy that was like bragging about how much he was making. And then he showed his screen and then he forgot to
Oh
blur out
no.
like a certain
The
part.
classic guru mistake.
Exactly, exactly. So then I basically I found his website and he was making like 30,000 euros a month in revenue, often like an old, think of WooCommerce team from like 2012 maybe. And then I was like, okay, this is my shot. This is what we're going to do. So I essentially created the store and think of when you have 700 euros, just a Shopify subscription domain is like
Yep.
10% of your net worth.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, but this is going to work. And then I put money on ads, and then I think the second day it was a sale of like 150 euros. And then that week, and it was like 1,500 euros. I was like just
Mind
mind
blowing.
blown. 'Cause I think I'd been literally for 4 years trying and trying and trying. Best month was maybe 2,000, 2,500 euros. And then literally think of in 1 week,
You already
it's
made it.
already doing it. And then think of by 2 weeks in, I'd made more in 2 weeks than I made, think of the previous, think of, yeah,
Year?
4 years
Oh
basically.
man. And this was instantly on Google? Like,
Instantly on Google. Yeah, it was running at basically like 4 or 5 in RAWs
wow.
from literally the first like euro spent.
But what made you decide to go instant with Google? Because everyone is teaching, even maybe the gurus are teaching the Facebook stuff. Why did you go with Google?
I mean, I could always say, okay, Google is a better platform. Okay, I know the Google platform better, but the real reason was when I was trying a lot on Facebook to get profitable earlier, Facebook basically blocked my profile. So I
Okay.
didn't have a Facebook
Another option.
profile
Yeah.
to run. So then it was really just, okay, I know there are structures and there are solution. I'd even got my father's profile blocked, so I didn't really have anyone else that I could
Yeah.
get the profile from. So then I was really okay, but I need to make this work, so I'm just going to make it work on Google.
Yeah.
And then that was, I think, the honest answer why
I love
Google,
that answer. I
other
love that.
than Facebook.
So
And
you had
then
like no other options in your mind, like, okay, well then I need to try Google because this is not working.
correct. That was basically the decision. And then think of we then so yeah, was just me, was packaging all the products, importing them, went up to maybe 30,000 euros in terms of revenue. Think
Nice.
of by so basically the same as the guy was doing. So I almost just took the market share
Yeah, yeah.
from
What he was
him,
doing.
and then think of that was built as a brand. And then we were like, okay, if we can sell one product in just Norway, why don't we try to sell it to the Swedish guys and
Yeah.
Danish guys in Germany and US? And then we did that, and it started working. Okay, some markets weren't so good, but okay, we realized, okay, we could just copy and paste, translate it, and we just could like double our market share.
And we're still talking about one product,
One
right?
product, yeah.
Yeah.
So that would think of all I did. Think of those 6 months, and then up come the next year. It's winter. The first product wasn't. It was like a bit of a seasonal product. So I'm looking there in winter. It's like, okay, we were not really making much revenue from it. And think of this was very in the beginning, so I didn't really know think of much business at all. So I had my financial documents, and I just had think of what a Excel sheet
Yep.
basically. And I had my revenue, my ad spend, my cost of goods, and then my profits.
Profit. Yep.
And then yeah, you see where the story goes. When you run an e-commerce business, you have other expenses that is very important to keep
Yep.
track of.
Yep.
Think of Shopify fees, like apps, employees,
Transaction fees.
transaction fees, forex fees as well. And then it's like when you start adding that up, I thought I was making like 10,000 euros profit per month, and I realized like, shit, we were losing like 2,000 euros. I think of what we have in the account is just for VAT.
Yep.
We're like, okay, we now it's like another moment almost. Okay, back against the wall. Okay, let's make something work. And then that was really when we just decided, okay, we know we can sell a product on Google on different markets. So let's try to just sell more products. And that's
Yep.
when we really started to think of the entire dropshipping momentum from it. So then we were just, okay, let's just launch a bunch of products and let's start figuring out, think of the hit rate.
Yep.
And that's where we really started discovering, think of the power of Google as well, in terms of just, okay, you could just push out a lot of products to it. Let's say you have a 10% win rate. It's not more complex than basically, okay, if I test 10 products and one of them work, what happens if I test 100 products?
Exactly.
500 products, 1,000 products. And then that's basically what we did. So then we just, okay, we took the product and we just launched a lot similar. If it was working in one market, we were duplicating it across other markets. And that's really think of what we then could scale up to very well over the think of that those really 18 months, almost
Yeah.
2 years, where we just kept adding products, we kept adding markets, we started expanding the sales channels as well. We saw, okay, what we're doing on Google, we can do the same on Facebook. We started running Facebook as well. We started seeing, okay, if we start running with advertorials, if we start running with better product pages, we start adding email. Think of all of those. We're just okay, increase, increase, increase. And I think what we did very well was that we were very focused on think of looking at it as a portfolio. So I see a lot of others. They were like, how could you imagine? Like, okay, you just had like, because a lot of the time we were just think of 4 or 5 people on the marketing team. We were managing, think of hundreds of products in a lot of different markets. And they were like, okay, how could you really manage all of
Yeah.
that and still get, think of traction and growth from it? And I think one of the things we're doing is we're not looking at it as think of 100 different products. We're more looking at it as okay, we have a distribution channel and let's improve that distribution channel. So almost think of it like a logistics. It's almost okay, you have warehouses and then you have like trucks that's getting shipped out.
Yeah.
And then okay, let's improve the warehouses, make those better, because then we know every single product in our portfolio and future products we launch will
Yeah.
then have a benefit. So we invested quite a lot in areas I don't think a lot of people are investing in. We think, okay, it was a lot on the CRO work and essentially think of the templates. Think, okay, what type of templates do we use? Because then it's almost think of, imagine if you have 500 products in a dropshipping portfolio and you improve the product page by 10%. You're literally improving your entire business by 10% if that is applicable
Correct.
across the entire portfolio. So then let's say, okay, you're doing 100K per month. What is a 10% improvement on your product page worth?
Thank you.
10K on month one.
Yep.
But if you look at it on a year, it's worth
way more.
120K.
Exactly.
And then what happens as well is basically, it's not just worth 120K, because it means that other products that, okay, you would launch before that would be break even,
Got
suddenly
awesome.
now are at 10% profit
Increase as well.
margin.
Yep.
So that was, think of one of the areas that we were investing in quite a lot. And then yeah, and then it was really think of just more markets, more products, and building it out. Where think of yeah, we did quite well. What we think of the last year and a half on just following that structure.
Yeah, it's crazy to think because you started with like 0 to maybe 30K a month, and now you've done 8 figures with just dropshipping. That's in how many years is this in total right now?
So I mean, it's I think of from I launched the first product to we did think of the 8 figures came in think of in 2.5 years.
Yeah, it's insane. Yeah, you did very well. So for the people that are very new to this channel, and or maybe watching this a longer time, guys, this is not the typical strategy that we teach here, and this is why I want to get a little bit more knowledge from you as well, because what people do when people follow me and are in the community itself, we teach especially like we launch a shit ton of products at first. So what we do, we put a lot of products in our store yet. We launch a big PMAX campaign on Google, and we will see what sticks and we improve what sticks. That's exactly what we do. And you launch one product, you optimize the product before, and you just make sure that you have like a whole funnel running above this product, and you make sure that you optimize this funnel consistently, right? This is exactly your method.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's very similar to what you're doing. So think of we also have some campaigns that is running and think of in think of yeah, let's say a big PMAX campaign, we
Yep.
just put everything in there and let just Google optimize. And I think it's like it's almost the same in a way the same strategy, but what we focus a lot more on is think of okay, instead of sending just a product page, could we think of an advertorial before?
Yeah.
And then think of it, or okay, instead of okay, we can send direct to product page. Okay, checkout page. Can we add an upsell to it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because then it's almost think of all of those small elements start to compound.
It's all touch points from the customers. So indeed, it makes sense that if you have like products that sell some kind of solution, you inform the customer upfront. While we see that a lot of people that start with Google as dropshipping, they start with products like fashion, home decor. It doesn't have like any added value. It's just like the visual that sells, because people can visualize themselves like using this glass of water. So you can sell the glass of water while while you focus on higher perceived products that solve a bigger problem and gives them a solution, and you just inform them on the solution.
Correct, and I think it's like I think the principles are the same, and I think the tactics really grow out of just think of iteratively solving
Yeah.
problems. So I think it's like obviously this is working for us, but I think the reason it works for us is basically okay, we've put like thousands of hours into it. We've just been working on it consistently. And we didn't really start out with think of mapping out, okay, this is the best strategy. This is what we're going to do. These have these different think of criteria that is good. It's like think of similar to when I was sharing with you, okay, we started with one product and okay, product is dipping. Okay, let's add more products. Okay, let's try to add more markets. And I
Yeah.
think it's like, yeah, it's almost instead of, yeah, there's like a Buddhist quote where I think of almost instead of chasing after think of the destination of the master, or like think of instead of following the footsteps of the master, just try to walk towards what the master was walking towards. So
Ah.
then it's almost think of okay, because it might be okay, we were lucky, we were very lucky, we had think of a lot of things that worked well for us, and it might be that okay, if you would start doing exact like even if we would start doing exactly what we're doing now, it might not work because think of market change, consumer behavior change. I think what is almost think of the value I can also give to your audience and think of to beginners is almost try to describe okay, what were our frameworks, what were we thinking, what were we optimizing for,
Yep.
to almost allow them to think of walk their own path,
Yeah.
but to the same direction.
Yes. Yeah.
Because then think of okay, if you only it's the same. If you only copy your strategy, you will be think of you could only execute it 70% as good
Yep.
as you.
Yeah.
Because it's like okay, you do your best to communicate, you do your best to think of share, but there are a lot of variables that you're not really able to share because
Yep.
it's so complex and you might really even know it yourself
True.
why it really works.
So you cannot even copy it. Yep.
Correct. And think of so then it's more okay, what are we optimizing for? What do we look at? And I think it's like if we share those principles, it almost doesn't matter if you start with Google, if you start with Facebook, if you start with either of
You
those
need to understand
things,
these metrics.
basically the metrics and the principles and the fundamentals.
Yeah.
Because if you have those, you're good to go. It's like think of then you basically okay, you get the basics from YouTube, and if you have the right almost mental framework and think of the right way of just making decisions, looking at the data, coming up with a hypothesis, testing it, see if it works or not, and then you can expand. I think yeah, you will get much better results as
That's a good
opposed to if you basically just try to okay find the store, okay, piece it together, and then
Yeah.
try to copy and paste it. Because yeah, I think it's like yeah, it's the same as I said. You try to search for what the master was searching for,
Yeah.
not walking their footsteps. And I'm by no means a master in this, so it's not from that perspective, but it's more just to understand. Think okay, what do we look at? How do we make the decisions?
Yeah.
And I think yeah, you probably also have a lot of principles that you've used over the time. I think for me, one of the most important is think of the lean startup methodology, where essentially think of okay, you need to stay lean, you need to test, validate, get data, and then base your next action on that data.
Yeah.
I've never seen a successful dropshipper with a 5-year business plan.
No. No.
I've
No.
never seen
No,
it.
that's true.
Like most of the successful dropshippers, they are very nonchalant.
Yeah.
They're very laid back.
That's
They're very humble, and but they are very very good at acting from think of real data.
Yeah. Growth
So,
driven. Yeah.
very growth driven. And think of the frameworks that a lot of dropshippers are using is that they come up with a hypothesis.
Yeah.
The hypothesis is just, okay, I think this will happen if I do X. Most people think of, okay, how do you come up with a hypothesis? Hypothesis basically, okay, I think this glass will sell. Then, okay, why do I think this glass will sell? And that's where, okay, how do you build up your hypothesis?
Yep.
And the number one way of building up an hypothesis in dropshipping specifically, you basically look at what other people are selling
On
in
data.
the same sales channel to the same market from the same supplier
Yep.
on,
Same
on a
offer.
page, on the same offer,
Yep.
and you basically see, okay, if it's just a dropshipping product, you can sell the same.
Exactly.
So then it's like, that's how you start building up your hypothesis.
Yeah.
So then it's like, okay, you don't just grab a random pillow and try to sell it and swing for the fences. You basically try to build up the hypothesis of, okay, I think if I do X, Y will happen. And in dropshipping, think of your most important hypothesis that you're testing towards is, okay, I think this product will sell. And then how do you then come up with, okay, I think this product will sell? You basically look at, okay, what are competitors selling? Because they have already done all the work. They've checked the margins. They've checked
They
the
have done the
product.
product market fit.
Correct.
Yeah.
So then it's already a validated product. So then
Yeah.
all that you think of your strongest way of building up the hypothesis.
Yeah. Yeah. I love
And
that
then
idea.
think of, okay, once you have a hypothesis, how do you make it even more strong or even more secure? Okay. The first one is, okay, you see that there is existing product market fit, but other people are selling it. The second thing, come back to what we were discussing earlier with, okay, making improvements to your infrastructure.
Yeah.
Where basically, do you have any unique advantages that you know that, okay, if someone else is selling this product, I can sell it better than. Those, think of unique advantages are in every single part of the business. So you might think of the Chinese dropshippers. What is their advantage? They basically buy the product for 30% less
Yeah.
than what
Maybe
we could,
more.
maybe more, yeah, than what we could ever get access to.
Exactly.
So think of that's their edge. And that makes them, so imagine if you're a Chinese dropshipper, you know that your cost of goods is 50% less.
Yeah.
Then you feel then it's like the hypothesis grow even stronger.
It's an unfair advantage.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then how you get even stronger unfair advantages is you basically start stacking these things.
Yeah.
So then you also have from a marketing perspective, that is, we'll touch a bit on a bit later on how you validate actually the hypothesis, but think of it's on your media buying. What is your media buying strategy? You have tracking. Do you have better tracking, more accurate tracking, or
Better
just
attribution.
14 basically just made it very difficult? Do you have better landing pages?
Yeah.
Think of, okay, is your landing page with the proper copywriting that is made? Do you have a better funnel? Like, do you have an upsell? Do you have a downsell? Do you have, upsell 2, 3, 4, 5? Like, I know some guys that are driving, 100% of 100% of the initial sales value through upsells.
Yep.
So think of 50% of the revenue come from upsells.
Yep. And that's an unfair advantage.
That's how someone can do 8 figures, or there are even people doing 9 figures
Yep.
in dropshipping, and while other people run the same product to the same market on the same channel and basically are not able to get it profitable or
Yeah.
even sales.
And it makes sense, right? Because you have more money to spend. And let's say if we run mostly on Facebook or on Google as well, the one with the most amount of money to spend with the least amount of ROAS will always win. So if you breaking even at a ROAS of 1.5 and you're spending $200, let's say for like an acquisition, you will have an unfair advantage for someone that is doing it like for $50 cost of acquisition.
Exactly. And that's almost what I was sharing when okay, our focus was, okay, improving the infrastructure, the distribution, of looking at it from a portfolio perspective. Yeah. So we were very focused on essentially just building out the improvements that could apply to the entire portfolio. So that's essentially okay, you then have your hypothesis. So this is the way I think of all dropshippers are basically thinking, okay, you have your hypothesis. How can I make sure that my hypothesis is stronger? And that's what we touch upon. You start building out these unique advantages. And think of unique advantages is very, very nuanced, unique for your specific situation.
So if I take it back a little bit, it means like you have like your idea about the product market fit. It does exist. Like, okay, we see that someone is selling it, but how can I improve it and even outcompete that one because he's already taking the marketplace share? That's a little bit how you think.
Correct.
Yeah.
So it's imagine if you see another guy walking on the beach and he makes 50,000 euros one day selling water bottles.
Yeah.
And you see there's another store there that is selling water bottles. I mean, I think I can walk around the beach for a day and sell water bottles.
Yeah.
And think of the first element of, okay, I can just do the same.
Yeah.
And then think of next is, okay, he's just selling water. I think I could get Coca-Cola. I think I could get
Pepsi, I don't
Pepsi,
know.
like
Yeah,
a lot of
everything.
different
Yeah.
sodas, basically. Okay, I have an edge over him. Okay, I think I can hire 5 people. All of them are walking around at different parts of the beach,
Yep.
and I think I can outcompete him.
Yeah.
And then he's starting to look at, okay, how can you then add those unique advantages to think of your hypothesis? Because then you will start being able to recognize a lot more like hypotheses that could work or winning products.
Yeah.
Because let's say if all you know is basically like an ad spy tool, all you can do is basically see what other people are selling.
Yeah.
Think of, okay, you're not as confident if it can work or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you start stacking basically, okay, I know we have a better funnel, better sourcing, better supply chain.
Yeah.
Then you suddenly start feeling very confident that, okay, if we launch 10 products, maybe in the beginning you think 5% of them will be profitable. But now it's like maybe 20, 30% can be profitable.
And this is just because you take more time thinking and ideation about how you're going to sell. Is that like the biggest difference that you have seen?
No, I think it's more just optimizing. Think of the funnels and the processes.
Yeah.
Where think of you do things that apply across your entire portfolio and spend time thinking on that.
Yeah.
So we don't spend that much time thinking, okay, now we're launching the glass. How can we make the glass sell very well? What is specific about the glass?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
comes much later after we already validated and it's already making, think of already traction is already, then it's like, how can we optimize it?
Okay.
This first initial stage is more just how can we make sure that any product we add, we have a better success than competitors.
Okay, and in this first stage, you're trying to find the product, you're trying to validate the product, but what are you looking for these kind of products? Like, because on Google, to be honest, it's pretty simple because Google is data driven. We have like something like keyword planner and that kind of stuff. What are you looking for?
I mean, in general, it's just think of I'm looking for what other people are selling and then see, okay, what else can I add to it? Do we have anything of unique advantages to think of to these type of products? And that will come down to think of, okay, our supply chain, think of our internal processes that we've developed. So it might be think of, okay, a good product for us can be a horrible product for you, but a good product again for like person B. But think of in general, what we want to see is, okay, we want to see a healthy gross margin. So we don't want to sell a product where, okay, if it costs 100, the cost of goods are 80.
Yep.
Because it becomes very, very difficult because similar to what you were saying before, where, okay, the person that can spend the most on ads will win. And then let's say if you're scaling at the 2 in ROAS, 2 in ROAS means that 50% of your revenue is going to ad spend.
Yep.
So then if your cost of goods is anywhere close to 50%,
You're
there's
fucked.
very little things over. So
Yep.
we are generally looking for, think of products, think of max 25%, in certain rare cases up to 30%
Yeah.
of think of what we expect the revenue to, like the sales price that we could get to. So that's the first thing we're looking for.
That was also the first thing you shocked me with when I met you. I saw your product you showed me. I was like, are you selling this for this amount of price? You just added more value to the product, while the average dropshipper was selling this one maybe for 69 or maybe 89, but you were printing with a way higher price and you had like a higher ROAS on return because you could spend more because your average order value was way higher than the average dropshipper.
Correct, and that's I like the analogy that imagine that, okay, the ads channels, they are basically a dogfight. So think of what do you want to bring to dogfight? Do you want like a cute chihuahua that's very flimsy and, okay, a chihuahua is basically, okay, you could spend €5 to acquire, or do you want, think of just a mean Rottweiler that, okay, he can spend €100 to acquire a customer? You want the Rottweiler in the dogfight, basically.
I guess the Chihuahua is also pretty expensive, to be honest. But yeah, it is true. Like this, you want to have like the power, you want to have the fuel, you want to have the gas, and that's ad spend. Like that's literally ad spend. How much more money you can spend is
Correct,
awesome.
because dropshipping is a business model that is driven by ads.
Yeah,
So the way to scale a dropshipping business is to spend more money on ads.
yeah,
And then think of that's as simple as it is. And then what you basically have is, let's say you can only acquire customers at, let's say, at 10 in ROAS. You could maybe spend €10 a day
Yeah.
if you need to keep that,
Yeah.
or maybe 100. But But let's say, okay, you can acquire at let's say a 2 in ROAS, you might be able to spend 10K per day.
Yep.
And then think of, there are certain guys here at the Capital Club, their target ROAS is like 0.4.
Yeah. Yeah.
So meaning, okay, the customer buys something for 100, they spend like 220 euros to acquire that customer.
Yeah. Upfront, not profitable.
Correct, but then they have subscriptions, they have
Exactly.
recurring, they have, yeah, a lot more to it.
Yep.
But it's not really applicable to dropshipping because you're not really trying to optimize for the LTV.
Exactly.
Dropshipping is an AOV optimized business. You
Exactly.
want to just squeeze as much, think of as much revenue out of that first order
Because
as
you know it
possible.
will be not a retention based.
Correct, because it's
business.
like that's not what you're optimizing
Yeah.
for.
Yeah.
Basically, a dropshipping business is optimizing for basically one transaction,
The initial
the
sale.
initial sale.
Yeah.
And that's why you need to think of maximize your AOV
Yeah.
on the front end.
So now you have validated and you've found a product that you want to sell. You just look at products that other people are selling. It makes sense. You just know like, hey, I have a better angle. I can make better CRO. I can make some stuff. What's the next step that you do?
Correct. It's a very good question. So essentially think of the steps. Okay, now we have the hypothesis. How do we validate it? You want an effective way, or think of an efficient way for your ad spend to think of validate the product. So imagine if you have a guy that is spending 100 euros and you know if you can scale it or not. And you have another guy that is spending 1,000 euros to figure out if it sells or not. Then what you're basically having is, okay, the person that is spending 100 euros to validate the product, he can spend 10 times more, or he can also test 10 times more products for the same amount as the guy that's going to only test like 1/10 of the product. So that, you think of, it's a key. And then this is where you just need to get some data. You need to develop some intuition of basically figuring out, okay, what is the most efficient way to be able for you to find out whether or not you can get this product working.
Yeah.
For us, we've seen the examples where, okay, we're not in the turnaround business. We're not trying to think of losers to A stars. We want the product that we launch to just hit it right out of the gate.
Yeah.
So think of, we kill products very, very quick. So think, okay, we launch it. We spend quite low, maybe 100, 150 euros. If we're not getting any purchases, we don't see the traction we're looking for, then okay, we just kill it and move on to the next.
Okay. And how do you actually launch the product? It is still with Google Ads? That's still the first initial?
Correct, and it also depends on the hypothesis. So certain products we launch on Facebook, because on Facebook you basically have, think of, you could set the bid cap, where, okay, this is what I'm willing to pay for the cost of acquisition, and then Facebook will spend if it thinks it's a buyer.
Yeah.
So one of our strategies is basically we test in a bid cap. If it doesn't spend at all, we can almost test the product without spending money on ads.
Yeah.
Because we know that, okay, if there is a good product market fit to it, Facebook will start to spend because they know it
will hit.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct. So that's one way. And then think of what we like to do as well if we're launching on Google. If you want to launch, think of shopping, we want to launch PMAX, we want to launch search, and think of brand search for that specific product as well. So think of, we want to give it a good shot, and then we want to think of initial traction within the first few days.
Yeah. And that takes a little bit longer, I guess, than in comparison with Facebook. You want to see with Facebook initial momentum, and Google you give it a little bit more time to
we're more
sizzle.
looking at just the spend.
Yeah.
So we're not like, okay, we kill it after 3 days. We're more looking, okay, let's just spend 100, 200 euros, and then we kill it. But there's no real, think of, magic to, okay, we're not launching with super specific keywords, or we're not launching with, think of, very advanced media buying. Because simply speaking, if a product works, it works.
Yeah.
You can launch it on manual CPC, you can launch it on max conversions, you can almost do whatever. If there is a good product market fit, the product will sell.
Yeah.
So think of, we spend a lot of time on the hypothesis, essentially building out that, and then think of validating. It's just being very quick at just getting the data you need.
Yeah.
So think of validation. What you're really doing is, okay, you're paying for data. The quicker you can get the data, the quicker you can validate the hypothesis or invalidate.
Yeah.
And this then creates a feedback loop that what all dropshippers are then doing.
Yeah.
So think of, you have a hypothesis, you validate it, you get data, you use that data to improve your hypothesis, And then the person that can run that flywheel the fastest and make improvements, that's the difference.
Yeah.
So that's essentially the thought process of think of any anything of success for anything of any dropshipper that I know that is doing a lot of volume is basically going through that process. Think of within their own little structure. So you have people they're doing fashion on Facebook. They are
Yeah.
doing think of health products on Facebook. They're doing PMAX and launching like, but it's the exact same things people are doing. You basically come up with a hypothesis. Initially, that will largely be driven by just what you see on YouTube and on courses.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, this guy says this works. Screw
Why
it.
not?
Let's
Let's
test
do it.
it.
Yeah.
And then you test it, and then you get data, and then you need to be able to look at that data. What is that data telling you? If you don't get any sales, it's not working.
Yeah.
So okay, you need to try something else on the hypothesis.
Yeah.
And then okay, but let's say you start getting some sales, but it's going at break even. Then it's like, okay, why is it going at break even? Okay, is there something with the product? Is it something with the landing page? Can I make any improvements? And then you start developing, it's called intuition, but it's almost just data points. So you start think of getting a gut feeling of like, okay, I know this product will sell because of, okay, I can't really tell why, but okay, I've seen this before.
It's what we've been taught here, like it's called here data sets in Capital Club. Luke always talks about it, and it's just because you have the experience yet, you have like somewhere, you have a data set, and we have now access to download it instantly. So you're like, oh, it's like just like a PC. You're just seeing something, you download it instantly. We have it in storage up front here, but that's just the experience that people lack in the beginning when they start dropshipping because they don't have these data sets yet. And that's why I think a lot of people start with emotional feelings with their products because they think that this will be working, but they don't know yet. And we launch products that we know are working. So we have like that unfair advantage as well by just being longer in the game.
Correct is almost think of, it's a bit like think of a, not the lottery, but think of the roulette table.
Yeah.
Think of when you first start, the probability of your first product working might be 1 out of 100. You might need to test 100 products for it to work.
Yeah.
But over time, you start basically switching more and more of think of almost the numbers in your favor.
Yeah.
So then at a certain point, it's like, okay, you're spinning the roulette wheel. It costs you 200 euros to validate a product. But if you win, think, okay, it makes you 5K in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then at a certain point, you have like a 20% win rate.
Yeah,
Or 15%.
I think it's a really bad example for my channel here because I've been addicted to gambling like many times, and it was so guys. If you want to make sure that you make money, start dropshipping and don't do the roulette. But I know what you mean. It's like the feeling that you get. That's why I got hooked on gambling as well, because after a while I noticed, hey, this is like. These are my favorite numbers, and I know if it hits, it hits strong. So I always started to really gamble on these products, on these numbers, because I knew if they hit very big. And I think if you apply that kind of stuff in the dropshipping business, for example, what I've seen is that a lot of people specifically notice one niche. Like, for example, health and beauty. If that is the one that you have been gambling a lot on and it works amazingly, keep gambling on that one instead of like having like, oh, let's go to another roulette table with different numbers and you need to learn again and over again. Is that something you apply as well? You stick like at least in one niche that you're specific in?
Correct, and I don't think it's necessarily done intentional. It's more done with think of what data we get.
Yeah.
So think of, okay, we start developing a competence, and I think it's a bit of luck in the beginning of almost like, okay,
Yep.
my first product was a health product that worked.
Yep.
So then you start getting more data on health products, you start knowing the consumer, you start knowing, and then you just start iterating from that point. So then, and it's the same as what you were saying with Gamble, but think of what changed that with Gamble is, okay, if you know the math behind it, you're not even gambling because you know the math.
Yep.
And then at a certain point, you become the house in a way. So then think of with gambling, the reason gambling is bad is because the odds are not in your favor.
Yep.
Because the house always wins.
Yep.
But what you can basically do through, think of skill set and through knowledge, is that you can start switching the odds basically
Yeah.
in your favor.
Now I know it's what you mean. It's like gambling is based on luck and not on skill. Like especially roulette, you're not doing anything. Like the house is spinning the wheel and not you. And indeed, in business, like in dropshipping in general, you spin the wheel. So you know exactly after one time, like if you spin this way and you launch it with this amount of money, you know, this can work, and the odds are getting into your favor.
Correct, because it's like, think of, you can skew the metrics because you decide the
Yep.
wheel basically that you're playing.
Yep.
So think of in roulette, okay, the best case scenario is you double your money. If you lose, you lose all your money.
Yep.
That's basically the math of roulette.
Yep.
But think of in dropshipping, it costs you 100 euros if you lose. But if you win, you can make like 5 million from a single product.
Yep. Yep.
So imagine a roulette table that you play, and let's say it's a 1% probability,
Yep.
but it costs you 100 euros to play, and if you win, you make 1 million.
Yeah, it's crazy because now I've known you go from 0 in 4 years to 8 figures. That's for people watching this, that's insane. They will dream of like a 1K day. So what would be your structure look like if you would go from 0 to 1K a day, and how much money would you allocate for your hypnosis and like your initial test phase?
I mean, it's yeah. What I would do looking back is I think of, you need some cash flow, because you need to spend money on ads. So I would almost say, okay, get just a normal job to just think of get some cash flow. I didn't do it, and you might lose the edge if you get too comfortable, but you need some cash flow.
Yep.
Because it's like, if I would start now with 700 euros, I'm not confident that
Yeah.
of the first product would hit.
Yep.
But I'm quite confident that, okay, if I go back and, okay, I can test 10 products, okay, I'm fairly confident that
Yeah, your
that
5K
something will
budget,
get.
for example,
Correct.
500 euros per product. Yeah.
Correct. But then you basically you need to survive and stay in the game long enough to get your first winner.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if that's your first product or if your 50th product or if it's like your 200 product after like, think of a year and a half of testing. You just need to survive long enough to get your first success.
Yeah, it's funny because in the community that we have, we teach how to go from 0 to 1K a day within 90 days. And this is why I was very confident that with Google, for example, it's not all about budget. It's all about time and experience as well. So especially the strategy that we do, it's just one big campaign, one big PMAX campaign, and you need to feed the AI from Google. You really need to feed it. And that's with products. So instead of like doing a lot of budget, I can tell people like, if you have time, you can add more products to it and do it on a low budget. That's what we do, 30 euros a day. But then the 1K day will come maybe in 90 days. With your strategy, you saw like, hey, 1K a day was pretty quickly and you could scale much harder. But then you need to have like the cash flow that's coming in. You really need to start reinvesting it as well. So how do you look at this cash flow game? Because what a lot of people I think are misunderstanding is dropshipping is not a cash flow positive game. It's like you're always reinvesting your profits into the business because you're growth driven. How do you make sure that you don't go broke because of lack of cash flow?
I mean, you need to just, there's a few different elements. So the first one, I think of the most basic is, okay, you need to develop some basic financial acumen to look at the numbers, and you need to track it. It's irresponsible to think of run a business and think of start doing revenue and think of not having control over your finances. I know a lot of people that go into entrepreneurship, they I don't want to look at it. I don't want to look at the think of the bank account. I don't want to do the accounting, but it's necessary. You don't have a choice.
Yep.
And then you need to basically map out your expenses. So you need to figure out, okay, what is almost similar to like if you're trying to save, you need to make a budget. It's almost similar. You need to figure out, okay, what are the expenses I have? Okay, what is the ads? What is the cost of goods? What is, think of the payment processing fee? And think of that is what's happening on the, think of day to day. And then you need to calculate, okay, how long time does it take for the payment processing to give me my money? When you're starting out, that might be a T+7. So think of, okay, if you sell on Monday, you get it next Monday. Then it's simple math. You figure out, okay, how much are you spending each day?
And can you sustain it for 7
And
days?
can sustain it for 7 days?
Yeah.
And then my philosophy is always, okay, I don't want to be in a position where I'm basically out of options.
Yeah.
So I always leave a margin of safety that, okay, I don't want to just make it on 7 days. I want to have 10 days.
Yeah.
Think of, because you might get holds, you might get reviews, you might have an unexpected bill. So it's always keep some extra margin. That's the ideal case, and there are always cases, especially in the beginning, where you might be running at the very, very slim. I mean, I started on 700 euros, and it was think of a day to day, just managing, keeping the Google account live
Spending.
and spending. And I would also sometimes just reach out to my customers saying, hey, there's a week delay. And then I would basically get the money to be able to pay for the cost of goods.
Yeah.
Think of, there are, especially in the beginning, if you're starting with very tight cash flow, you almost just think of, at a certain, of course, the ideals, you need to have control, but there are certain times where you just need to force it through.
Yeah.
Or think of, you just need to apply like human will to the problem and just make it work.
Yeah, that's true. I think a lot of people don't they're really misunderstanding this part. And I think especially the highest emotion that we have is greediness. So if we see something is working and you start with a ROAS of 5, you know, like, oh man, I'm going to spend a lot of money on it. And then people don't know what's coming because another level, another devil. If you're making, so let's say 500 euros a day and you go to like 5K a day with your payment process as well, that is another level for your payment process as well. So people underestimate that, and then you're like your first hold, and then we've seen like, oh, then I start shipping out the products a little bit later, but that makes the hold even bigger, and then you have like all these issues, and people are really doomed to fail. So especially in the beginning, keep it slow, keep it, don't push it too thin. Don't push it too thin.
Correct, because think of, what's interesting is that a lot of people have, think of, a negative connotation to greed, because I think greed is always, it's always associated with just short-term decisions and behavior.
Yep.
Because it's like, think of, let's say you're greedy over a 30-year time period. Think of a lot of the decisions that get negatively judged are actually, think of, removed if you're greedy over a 30-year perspective.
Yeah.
Because if you're greedy over a 30-year perspective, okay, it means that, okay, in 30 years, I want the best life possible.
Yeah.
So that means, okay, you're not going to screw over a partner.
Yeah.
You're not going to take like very short-sighted of risk, basically bankruptcy. For what? You scaled like 5 days too early, but okay, you sacrificed your position in 30 years.
Yeah.
So I think it's what has also been very clear for me over being, think of, in Capital Club here and speaking with a lot of people, think of, much farther ahead of the game than what I am, is almost just think of how long the game of business is.
Yeah,
Think
it's
of
really long.
It's much longer than think of what anyone, especially think of when I was starting, I was like, think, okay, this is like a few years work, and then, okay, you get to the point where you know business, you know, and then once you get into it, you realize that, okay, this is 10 years, this is like 15-year run.
Yeah.
It's not just, in the beginning, you're very driven by, okay, I'm going to set up the Shopify store, I'm going to get sales, and it's going to be good in 2 months' time. But what is happening is you're setting in motion and you're building momentum that is very difficult to think of to stop or to pause.
Yeah, true.
Because it's like once you're first into it and you start getting the first success and you start you're in it, you're solving problems, you're just taking step after step. This is like a game that is like 5 years, 7 years. It's like just to almost get the basics of, think of, e-commerce or dropshipping.
Yep.
It takes you a few years because what is different is, okay, let's say you're not lawyer, but let's say, okay, you're working as an accountant. It's one specific skill that you're learning. It's accountancy. It's a defined, think of, finite amount of information you need to learn. It's like, okay, you could think of the book of all the accounting rules. You get all the course materials. And there's nothing more to accountancy than just that.
Yep.
When you start a business, it's like, think of, you have accountancy that you need to learn, plus like 50 other skill sets.
Yep.
And then each level think of their own individual, almost think of accountancy degree that you need to learn, you need to master essentially to be able to go to the next level. So let's say when you start, it's like, okay, you need to learn marketing, you need to learn media buying, you need to learn copywriting, you need to learn web design,
Yep.
you need to learn think of
Hiring.
hiring, and then hiring comes almost like a step one, and then
Yeah.
once you have hiring, okay, what is contract? They're asking for a contract. I'm like, why don't you just
Yeah,
take
yeah. This is so amazing about doing dropshipping. I think that it will get you a full rounded entrepreneur if you do it correctly. So I have two more questions left. I know we have a few minutes left for this room. So first of all, what is your biggest takeaway for your dropshipping business that you have learned here meeting other people doing high numbers? We know, like we just spoke to Davey Fogarty, for example, owner of the Udi, is doing 500 million a year, has done 850 million. What is like your biggest takeaway?
I mean, the biggest takeaway from dropshipping business is probably, okay, think of, if you want to take it very, very far, you need to focus. To think of, you can't think of doing different things. Like if you're trying to build the dropshipping business and you're trying to build a SaaS, and you're trying to build an app at the same time, it's not going to work.
Nope.
And then I think that is, think of, the most important thing that has been very, very clear for me is like just the importance of focus, where
Yeah.
you need to be able to just put all your energy, all your capital, all your resources in one direction.
Yeah, and maybe people have the idea that one basket is wrong, but what if this is what Alex Hormozi taught me in Las Vegas? He made a YouTube video about it as well, but he had like one glass of water, and a lot of people are filling it up halfway, and then they start adding more glasses. But he is just like, fill this glass so much higher that you need to have multiple glasses to collect all the water. And he's like, this is why billionaires maybe at the end have 7 business income, because they have too much money because it's overflowing. But you don't need to start with like 7 business models, 7 different incomes. I think that's really wrong, and that's like the shiny object syndrome that's kicking in.
Correct. And I think it's like, yeah, we all fall for it essentially.
Everyone is
Because,
sensitive for it.
and then I think it's also when you're starting out and when you go to new level, there's a beauty, or there's a benefit to almost spinning your wheels.
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, you could almost get the right answer immediately, but there's certain lessons and there's certain knowledge that you almost only learn through practice.
Yeah.
So I think that's also one of the reasons the game is so long.
Yeah, it's true.
Because it's like, imagine if you're hiring a senior guy, it takes 6 months to figure out if that is actually working or not.
Yeah.
At a certain sense.
So that will be also your advice to beginners. If you would summarize this in like a few sentences, what would be your advice to like the beginner dropshipper who wants to start with Google Ads dropshipping, for example, very niche specific?
I mean, just start, look at the data, iterate, and don't stop.
Yeah.
It's
That simple.
It's that simple. You need to start. You need to launch your first product. You need to look at the data. You need to optimize. Think of iterate, and you can't stop.
Yeah.
Because it's basically, if you do that, it doesn't matter if you start with PMax. If you start with it doesn't matter, because if you look at the data, you iterate, you test, you come up with a new hypothesis, and you grow. That's it. It's not more complicated.
And I think it's not that complicated. So I've created a school community. We teach people how to do all the stuff that we have talked about. How do you take a look at joining programs, joining mentor classes? I don't know. I know you're a big advocate of like self-development and learning.
I mean, it's like, it's not even necessary. It's critical.
Yeah.
You need to basically I invested in those 2 years in high school. As a high schooler with no income, I spent like 14,000 euros on different courses that didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
And apparently on the surface level,
Yes.
didn't go anywhere because
Yeah.
it didn't
No
result in
instant
any
ROI.
revenue.
Yep.
Yeah, but it's only 3 years or 2 years later when I then start and I get the first product profitable. Then it's suddenly all of those courses I
Starts to
took
compound.
starts coming back. Okay, we can launch Facebook. Oh yeah, I know, because I
Watch
I
that one.
bought a Facebook course like two years ago, and I was buying courses of like hiring and management people before I even had any employers or anyone working.
Yeah.
So I think it's like it's so important to be able to invest in yourself and I think courses, I think one of the best ways to look at it. And I would just think of almost get as many courses as possible, especially in the when you're new, when you're because you just need to consume so much information because yeah, there's so much you need to learn.
True. And how do you compare? Because I'm a big advocate of that one as well, but I would take a level deeper or maybe higher. It's like normally what I found more interesting about the whole course is like the community that comes from. Like you meet new people. I know you have been in bigger programs as well. I think we're right now in one of the biggest programs. So you guys that are watching right now, we invest in this community as well. Is that something you, because this community, what we're sitting in here is like 20K. My community is $200. That's the big difference, but still it's the same principle, connect with people like-minded. Is this something you advocate as well? Like, did you notice a difference between following the course and just getting the skills or meeting new people that have already acquired the skills and have been applying it to your business?
Yeah, I think it's like you need to be, it's like the same. You're the average of the 5 people you hang around with.
Yeah.
To think of, okay, if you're the 5 people you spend the most time with don't have any interest for business,
Yeah.
it's very unlikely that you will also start building a business and have any
Correct.
interest for it. So I think it's just one of the ways of just from a, you need to surround yourself with people that are like-minded and do the same. And I think communities, at least for me, they have two, I think, of very, very good aspects of it, of why it's almost why invest in community. Okay, I could just look at the course and get the course. Why think of almost from a, if you're purely logical and you just think of business minded, why invest into, okay, going like traveling and meeting other people, speaking about Skype calls you don't really get any value from, or like think of, and you need to go through the motions. And there's two elements to it. One is you will in conversations come across knowledge you just didn't know existed. It's like you never even looked for it.
Yep.
An example would be think of when you're processing payments on Visa and MasterCard. Visa and MasterCard have specific programs that deflect chargebacks. That basically
Yep.
a chargeback come in and you could just refund it before
Exactly.
it comes to your payment processor.
Yeah.
That's something you almost never hear about. And I heard from just someone was speaking just like casually. I was like, what? I didn't even know that
Yeah.
existed.
Yep.
So I think it's like that is one of the element. And I think the second element is just also the think of the competitive nature. I think is very, very good because it's like it's like you almost have these people on such a pedestal. Oh man, he's doing like 5 million a month, or he's doing a million a month, or he's doing, if you're a beginner, he's doing 100,000 euros a month in sales.
It crushes your limited beliefs.
Correct, because you almost imagine that these guys are like demigods, or they're like insane. I can't imagine how he's able to manage it. And you speak with them and you start noticing, okay, he's just like me.
It's beautiful.
And then it's like, it's just, yeah, it gives you the invitation. Okay, you can do those things as well.
Yeah, I love it, Victor. I love the conversation. To be honest, I think we will meet multiple times. Well, we do, and I think this was very useful for everyone. So thank you for sharing your knowledge, and see you on the next one.
Yeah, thank you very much. I enjoyed it a lot as well.
Me too. Thank you.
Thank you.